So I think about DLP and the bigger picture, and I actually think of it actually now as ILP, information loss prevention. Because data by itself, it sounds computery and techy. And if we want to go and talk to top business management, they understand information much better than they understand data. They are more interested to hear about information because they understand it as a concept. If you talk to them about data loss, it's like, whoa. It's kind of like some IT stuff. And think about not just the tools that people use, but actually the combination of business, the combination of us as security professionals, and the combination of tools together, which is what we need to make it work effectively. It's what we need for good information loss prevention. Right now, when I see implementations globally, not just in Russia, I see a big focus on the technology aspect. People buy the tool, they stick it in, they don't tell the business about it, they don't integrate it into their processes, they don't integrate it into incident management and response. It just sits there and it does a lot of things that upset people. Right? We don't leverage the tools and think about the people, the process, and the technology. So we need to evolve our thinking and think about it more like this. Think about the process, think about how we integrate the things we're going to do into the business processes. The other thing that we see in these organizations is a very proactive approach to information security. It's not something that happens and, oh my God, let's panic, what are we going to do? Everything's gone wrong. Ah! Right? This is, we are proactive. We are actively looking at what's happening. We're actively communicating with the business when we see potential issues. We're actively talking to the business. We're actively telling them about emerging threats. And we're building that into their processes, and we're building that into the way that they manage security. So basically, the key thing, and the key thing that they all have in common, is if you look through their organizations, there's a very common view and a common strategy and a governance framework around information loss, around information security in general. Right? Appropriate governance systems in place. So if you look at our organization and data loss and what's driving that, it's driven by our group managing risk or risk management partner, who is responsible for reducing the overall risk of the firm. Yeah? If you look at the bank, this was driven by a combination of risk, internal audit, and operations. These were the people, and it was at top level. If you actually look at that bank, the person who was most behind the project was actually the CEO of the organization. That was the level of engagement that they had on that project. And if you don't have that, you're going to be fighting an uphill battle. Right? Basically, again, a comprehensive management system in place, a good management system for security that's linked very closely and works very closely with data loss and with the business. The next one is the hard one, data classification. I remember doing data classification projects in 1980 something, and that's really quite scary. And I never saw a really good one, because they all try to be overly complex. And again, for each of these three organizations, the thing that made DLP more successful was their ability to actually obtain their inventory of assets and easily have a repeatable process to classify them. So building a foundation basically starts with data classification, information classification, because without it, the rest of it falls down. Right? Standardize the requirements, make it simple, clear, and communicate it well. Right? And make sure that you include the regulatory requirements as part of that process, which is something we often bolt on at the end and doesn't always work. Next is to design the framework, a global framework with policies, supporting documentation. Think about how we're going to build that into existing business processes. Maybe it's around information handling of personal data, of medical data. Think about how we're going to build our incident response and what are we going to do when something happens. You know, we can't just immediately stop everybody from working, so what is our approach to dealing with issues? Right? How are we going to share and collaborate information throughout the organization so we build good practices? Right? Build a governance model. Right? It needs to start at the top. It needs to have senior management commitment and buy-in, otherwise it's going to fail. Right? It needs to be fit for purpose. It needs to fit your organization and not just any organization. And then again, people. Oh, without people, the world would be so nice. I remember putting a presentation together on training and awareness about 5 years ago, and I asked all the security guys in the room to put their hand up if they thought that people were the biggest problem in security. And everybody put their hand up, of course, because we hate users. And then I asked, well, how many people do training when people join an organization on what they should be doing? And kind of some of the hands came down. By the time I got to the how many people here do regular training and awareness sessions for people, almost nobody had their hand left up. And so we've got to the stage where we think users are the biggest problem, but we're not willing to help them to make the right decisions.